Hello, everybody, and welcome to Community Forum. My guest this week is who else? Look at this gentleman right here, Jeff Turco, state representative. This is a long overdue show. How long you been there now at the State House?
It's 11 months.
11 months.
Yes, April 7th I got sworn in of last year.
So it took us 11 months to get together, but I ran into him not too long ago at the Winthrop Arms, and we said, let's get together and do a show.
Yes.
So hopefully this will be something we may do like once a month, just to get a thing of what's going on with the town of Winthrop and how we relate to the state. And I guess the first thing I'll ask, how's it going, Jeff?
I love it. It's challenging, it's rewarding, it's frustrating at times, but it's exactly what I expected it to be. Mm-hmm. It's 90% of what I've done so far in the last 11 months has been to help people. Yeah. The number of people that call and ask for assistance with unemployment problems or housing problems, or because I'm a lawyer, call up with a legal question, looking for advice. It really is, you recognize how much need there is out there in the community. And it's nice to be able to help people in those circumstances.
Well, I must ask, it must have been getting into a position where you're now filling the shoes of a person, the likes of the speaker.
Yes.
And, Bob certainly had made his mark in state government and certainly did a lot for the town at the time he was not only rep, but certainly a speaker.
Yes.
So you had some big shoes to fill. And so that must have been something for you to, a challenge for you, just that aspect of it. And I guess through the years, if you look at what Bob had done, he really led the team when it came to mitigation with Massport or MWRA.
Yes.
How do you see your role when that time comes to look at the mitigation packages and so forth?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think anyone could fill Bob's shoes. The work that he did as chairman of Ways and Means, and ultimately is the longest serving speaker in the history of the Commonwealth, the benefits that we got in Winthrop and Revere, just a lot of it was unspoken. Right. A lot of it was just stuff that was put in the budget. It didn't mention Winthrop by name, but it would say a small seaside community north of Boston, within Suffolk County. A town within Suffolk County.
Adjacent to Revere.
Exactly. Within 500 feet of my house. But that type of work that he was able to do as speaker and to say, hey, we're going to take care of my community. Right. It's tremendous, and and it's a big burden to try to rise up to that, and it'll take many years to sort of develop those type of relationships that he had. But he's been wonderful at sort of mentoring me and giving me advice and wise counsel since I've been in office. Always there to take a phone call. The number of people, my colleagues on the Hill that I've gone and sat down with one-on-one, and they said, "Oh, Speaker DeLeo called me and said you're great. You're going to serve the community. We're great. You'll be a great colleague."
That's good.
And that's helped to get things done in the first 11 months that I think a lot of people are surprised we've been able to get done.
That's good. How about what are your priorities?
Yeah, number one, my priority is community service, helping people, in need, taking those phone calls. Jake Lettieri is my legislative aide. He's been very involved with, receiving emails and phone calls and talking to people in the community about what they see as the needs. Legislatively, the substance use disorder issue is a top priority of mine, trying to come up with a smart, intelligent program to address the damage that's inflicted upon families and neighbors and friends by substance use disorder. Right. Vocational education, I couldn't be more happy that the people of the Northeast Regional Vocational School District passed the question for the new school.
Right.
And it's my responsibility as one of the reps from the area to try to get money to offset the municipal cost. I'm pleased to say so far we put $100 million aside towards vocational school construction. My colleague Rep. Janino, Senator Edwards, and a bunch of the state representatives that have voc schools that are under construction or in the queue for construction are working to get that number up to $300 million so we make it affordable for our communities.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
That's good. So let's talk about some of the local issues. One of the things is, I know there was a big to-do with the parking meters that DCR tried to put in Revere. and you were very instrumental in getting that whole thing reversed and so forth. Is that done? Is there anything that the citizens of Winthrop have to be concerned about? Because I know the next step was to be possibly Winthrop Shore Drive.
Correct. And so the original DCR proposal was to put paid parking on every DCR road under their jurisdiction. And they started with Revere. And I thought it was rather telling that they waited till Speaker DeLeo left to put the meters in, figuring they had two new reps in Revere. Rep Giannino replaced Representative Vincent. I was new, replacing Speaker DeLeo. And so they put the meters in. It was sort of like, hey, this is done and you got to deal with it. Yeah. And so we worked with our colleagues. And Winthrop Shore Drive was coming, in the pipeline to have parking stations there where you had to pay to park there. And so we worked with our colleagues. We got legislation passed. We overrode the governor's veto. Senator Boncory was instrumental in that at the time to override the governor's veto to say DCR cannot put paid parking on any road in their jurisdiction without the approval of the local city council. And so Revere went on board or on record and said, well, we will not approve this. And so the parking meters are gone and they can't put them back without the city council approval. Same thing in Winthrop. If DCR wants to propose to Winthrop to install them, they need the approval of the Winthrop Town Council. Yeah. It's a huge win for people because really the whole notion of paid parking on Revere Beach to me was offensive in the sense that the history of Revere Beach was the first public beach in the nation. 3.1 mile of people's homes were taken by eminent domain so the state could build a public beach or make the public beach available. And the notion was it was going to be free. Right. And they get the blue line there, and the idea that you're going to turn around and basically make it a paid parking situation, it just to me was not the right thing to do. And particularly knowing that the number of people in Winthrop that showed up at the protest or that called me and said, "We know we're next. Please fight this." Right. And frankly, it was really my first 11 months on the job. The number one legislative accomplishment has been to get that passed.
That's great. That's great. The Winthrop Foundation. You were actually on the Winthrop Foundation.
Yes.
Prior to your election as state rep.
Yes.
Where does that all stand now? I know it was all based on projects at the airport, and the funding was like $500,000 a year and so forth. Can you kind of backfill us on where that all stands?
Yes, and this again was an example of Speaker DeLeo, the importance of having Speaker DeLeo there at the time to help pressure Massport into saying, hey, we recognize we cause a burden to the town of Winthrop. In addition to the regular mitigation money that we give Winthrop, we're going to create this Winthrop Foundation. We're going to put, there were 5 benchmarks. So it was envisioned that it would be up to 5 years, but in reality it was 5 benchmarks for when construction would be done on the various projects at the airport. Winthrop would get $500,000 at each benchmark point. The foundation has received the first 2 allotments of $500,000, and obviously because of the pandemic and the effect it had on the airport, the use of the airport dropped dramatically at the height of the airport. I think it was down to 80 to 90%. Right. And as a result of that, Massport put a lot of projects on hold. So the delay between benchmark 2 and 3 is much longer than people have expected. But fortunately, the trustees of the foundation have been pretty good stewards of the money, and they still have money available to serve community needs and to go out and ask nonprofits, different groups in the community, including the town, how can we be of assistance?
Right. For the folks that don't understand how it works, where does that money go?
So that money initially comes into the town of Winthrop,
right,
to the Treasury, and then the town wires the money into an account, the Winthrop Foundation, which is made up of a series of trustees, one appointed by me, one appointed by Senator Edwards, 2 appointed by the town manager, the superintendent of schools, right, and the folks at Massport. And that money is held, I believe now, at Webster Bank, Webster Credit Union, and the money can't be spent without the approval of the trustees.
So the trustees, they look for projects, worthy projects.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I'll give you a couple of quick examples, if you don't mind. During Christmas, a lot of people felt that we needed better lighting at Crest Ave. And so the foundation spent some money buying lights and having them installed at Crest Ave in the park just to sort of brighten up the area. People had been battered and mentally bruised by COVID, and we said, let's spruce things up a little bit and augment what the town might not be able to afford. The other thing I think we did, which I think was wonderful, was we went out and we looked at every food establishment in the town of Winthrop. and we bought $500 in gift cards at $25 a piece from every single establishment in the town. I think we spent almost $40,000 on it. And we took that money, those gift cards, and we donated them to the food pantry at St. John's Episcopal, and we also donated them to Winthrop High School graduating seniors at the time. I think there were 2 apiece. We gave them to the superintendent to distribute. And what that did, the effect of that was, it was to help the needy in the community, but it was also to help the businesses with the quick cash infusion. It wasn't much, but to give them $500 when they were struggling to pay their rent because business was slow, people weren't able to go into restaurants. It was nice to be able to use the money for sort of the double whammy positive effect.
Okay. Let's talk a little about some of the things that are ongoing. Even the president brought up last night in his speech about the problems with addiction and all that associated with it. You and I have been affected by that personally, I know for a fact. What can the state do? What is the legislation? What can be done to help us deal with it? Funding more programs and so forth. Is there something that you could express?
Yeah, really what we're looking at right now is how do we fundamentally change how we look at this problem? The old way was, when my brother Jimmy was actively using, you'd be like, oh, he's a drug addict. People would be like, lock him up. Yeah, he's trouble. Lock him up. You're embarrassed about it. But then, as you start to realize you're not the only family in the neighborhood that's afflicted by this, you say, well, locking people up for this isn't solving a problem. Right. My prior professional life running a jail, you realize that 60-70% of the people in the jails are there for drug use issues or mental health issues, and you say we've got to have a better way to do this. Right. And so I think the program the Winthrop Police Department's running with Lieutenant Sacco Gregarian is phenomenal. They're going out, they're meeting people where they find them, they're talking to them rather than putting them in. The
This
chief.
is kind of like the door knock thing they call it?
Yeah, and the chief, they've set up a Chinese wall, so-called, in the police department between the work that he and his treatment folks do with the law enforcement part of it, and they go and they talk to people and say, hey, we want to help you. And so, they eventually, they don't take no for an answer. They keep going, but they recognize that the user has to be the one to say, I'm ready to, I'm tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Right.
And so one of the things legislative we need to do is, is take some of those programs, sort of pilot programs, and fund them at the state level around the Commonwealth to say what's working and what's not working. And when we find something that's working, let's expand it and expand opportunity for other communities to look at it. Right. And so the winter program, I'm working with the lieutenant and with Chief Delahanty to talk to our friends in Revere and Chelsea to say, can we make this a regional approach? Right. And I just think it's so desperately needed because,
What about like a lot of the problems were, if, let's say you had a person and you bring them to a facility. Lots of times the insurance wouldn't cover it. So has there been any change in legislation to change any of that, to make it an obligation of insurance companies to cover that type of services?
So there's been a lot of work over the last years, a lot of it prior to me getting there as well, on mental health parity, and to make sure, former Senate President Harriet Chandler from Worcester, who I worked with quite a bit over the years, she really led the effort in the state to have mental health parity with healthcare parity. Say there really isn't a difference. If you're, whether you have cancer or you have a heart condition, it's no different than if you have depression or bipolar. You need treatment and you need assistance. And so the legislature's done a good job. The bigger issue right now, I think, is not necessarily getting insurance coverage. It's making the beds available. Okay. The facilities are overwhelmed with people. The state facilities, so if you go or I go and we take a member of our family and we get a court order to have this person, what they call sectioned, and sent to Bridgewater for treatment, Bridgewater's another failure right now. You're trying to save your family member. You send them to Bridgewater. They're required by statute to have a certain amount of treatment each day, individualized treatment. And a lot of these people are sitting there, it's a 30-day commitment, and a lot of these people are sitting there for 20 days without seeing anyone. And so then the families who, you sit there as a dad, or me as a dad, or you as an uncle, grandfather, and say, why did I do this? And get this person sitting there, they're not getting the treatment, they're locked up, they're confined, it's supposed to be a civil setting. And so that's one of the things that I'm working with my colleagues on, Chairman Gonzalez, chairman of the Public Safety Committee out of Springfield, he and I have developed a really good working relationship right away. And we've talked about this a lot to say, look, use my experience having run a prison, to help formulate some better policy.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the situation where in order for you to get into a facility, they would have to be physically using.
Right.
Is that still the case?
In a state facility for a commitment, yes, but not for like a private facility. If you're someone that's struggling and you're relapsing, like a lot of the, in the Commonwealth, a lot of the sheriffs, because they're at the forefront of some of the stuff, they've really gone above and beyond to say, we recognize that we don't do the public any good if we only provide services to people while they're in custody, and then they're getting drug rehab, they're getting mental health counseling, and then they're released today and we give them nothing. So a lot of the sheriffs have said, we recognize we have a duty to these people after as sort of post-incarceration care. And the sheriffs have really done a great job of keeping connected and letting the former prisoners know, hey, we're here, we'll provide you this service, even though you're not in our custody. And Sheriff Tompkins, is really a leader in a lot of this stuff. I mean, he took a brave stand on the mass and cast problem, saying, it's immoral letting these people sit there and kill themselves day by day and just to act like the problem's going to go away.
Right.
And he took a stand and said, we're going to help these people, or at least we're going to offer to help people.
The veterans. Nothing, it seems we can't do enough for veterans.
Absolutely.
Is there anything in your playbook, your personal life, that you feel obligated to try to do more for the veterans?
Absolutely. The number one thing that we've done so far was the very first bill that I voted on, which was a great way to start a legislative service, was to allocate $450 million to build a new Chelsea and Holyoke Soldiers Home. But in addition, as part of that money, we also put money aside to build some beds, not a full soldiers home, but to build beds for soldiers in central Massachusetts as well, so that we weren't left with the scenario of either east or west, with nothing in between. We did that in April of last year. Just about a month ago, we passed reform on how the governance of the soldiers' home. As everybody knows, the tragedy that happened, I believe it was 78 soldiers died, were left to die with COVID because of the mismanagement and the lack of leadership. And so what we did was went to the legislature, under then Speaker DeLeo, created a commission that examined what went wrong, came up with a series of suggestions on how to improve it. And I think the vote was 158 to 1 or 157 to 2 or something for this bill, to Democrat, Republican together, saying we're going to insist that the new leadership of the Holyoke and the Chelsea Soldiers Home be professionals with a background in this type of care. You're not going to pick, hey, the governor's not going to pick, oh, this is my friend, my friend's son that will be a good leader of the Holyoke Soldiers Home, which is effectively what happened out there. So I couldn't be more thrilled that the very first vote of my career was to vote for the new Chelsea and Worcester area and Holyoke Soldiers Homes. And there's so much more to do. I talked to Rose Mazzucchelli and I talked to Mark Silvestri and Revere about the need of veterans every day.
I just don't understand when you see some of the things on TV, like the homeless. I'm a homeless vet. I just, why is that even happening?
It's just, it's absolutely appalling, and we need to do a better job as a Commonwealth and a country. I mean, I think Massachusetts is a leader in how we take care of our veterans.
Right.
And I think this again goes back to, a lot of this goes back to the mental health part of it. If you go talk to Rose, you talk to Mark, they get a lot of veterans that are dealing with PTSD, dealing with just mental health problems overall. The suicide rate of veterans is just heartbreaking.
It is.
And so we need to fix the mental health piece while we're also working to fix the housing piece. Revere built some housing on Shirley Ave that's geared towards veterans. And so that's been, I think there's 22 units there to help veterans get priority. I think that's a wonderful, and there was a private sector, public-private partnership, wonderful advance over there, and I'm proud it's in my district as well.
The landfill in Revere that's connected to the incinerator there.
Yes.
That thing has been going on and on and on, and I understand that it's really, that site is really not set up the way it's supposed to be by the current law.
Correct.
And what's happening there? Is that going to keep going on and on and on?
No, I'm pleased that to have jumped right in and taken a lead. Former Rep. Vincent from Revere, this was near and dear to her heart. And when I got elected, we sat down and she gave me, sort of gave me the 2-minute primer on what I needed to learn.
Right.
And I've been working with people like Cindy Lupi from Winthrop and others to go and fight that. And so, just by way of background, that landfill it's in an area of critical environmental concern.
Sure.
It's surrounded by minority populations who have been adversely affected. In new state law, it aims to protect these populations. But also from an environmental standpoint, it's an unlined landfill next to a salt and water marsh.
So everything can leach into it.
And so right next to the main landfill, there's an old closed landfill, the Dewey Daggett landfill, which if you drive by it right now and walk over there, you'll see literally bags of trash where the landfill it's been compromised, and it's going into the river. And so DEP is trying right now to spend $2 to $3 million before the end of June to stop it, because the Dewey Daggett landfill is a major environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. So the landfill next to the incinerator, right now, 30 years ago, it should have been closed. It's been suing, and they've been getting special permits to extend. I was able to get the commissioner of DEP to issue a letter a couple months ago that said it's DEP's opinion that as a legal matter, they cannot, once this current permit expires, or once they reach capacity, which is expected to be 2 years, that the landfill must close, that they can't get a further extension. That was a huge break to be able to convince the commissioner to issue that letter to the Revere leadership, Revere City Council, the Saugus Board of Health, and say, it's our position, we can't do this, because the folks that run the incinerator and landfill were out saying, well, the Saugus, hey, we'll buy you a new fire station, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, and sort of trying to buy them off. And we were able to get the regulators to say, as a matter of law, you cannot do this. And so now we're going to start having public forums in affected communities, Revere, Winthrop, Saugus, Lynn, to let them know, what does it look like when the landfill closes? What's the process? And we think once the landfill closes, the economics of keeping an active incinerator there are going to quickly turn, where the folks that run Whalebreeder, which is now Wynn Corporation, will say maybe it makes sense to pack up and do it somewhere else.
The Winthrop Ferry. I'll bring it up because I'm a big fan of the ferry.
Yes.
And I noticed there was a discussion at the last council meeting, not last night, but the one before, about, do we continue to let it operate and so forth. And as you know, it's been operating on subsidies from the state. And because of the subsidies, that means that the ferry can't really be the ferry that it should be, the commuter ferry, which if it was a commuter ferry solely for commuters, in the morning there would be schedules and people would know that they could go back and forth at certain hours. But because we're getting money from the state, we've got to send it over to Quincy, and they have to make a run at Quincy, and so forth and so on. So for as long as we've had it, it's not making any money. It's costing the town a little money, at least at the very beginning, for the cost of the boat, the initial expense and so forth. And each year it's offset to a certain degree by the grants and by ridership. So I guess the question I would ask, because a member of the council did bring it up, there's going to be construction at the tunnel. I think it's the Sumner Tunnel that's going to be worked on. And that means the Sumner Tunnel is going to be closed, and the other tunnel is going to be two ways. I remember when there was just one tunnel. I don't want to date myself. And, they used to put cones in the middle so the cars wouldn't,
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess the East Boston currently is working on getting a ferry system up and running. And I understand that they're having discussions with the MBTA, and this could become an MBTA ferry. Why don't we piggyback? Why doesn't Winthrop talk to the folks in East Boston, find out exactly what they're doing, and kind of piggyback on the idea that the MBTA could actually run the system? They should be running it anyway.
Absolutely.
But that's another question, another subject. I guess, could you get involved in that at some point in time?
Yeah, I think the ferry right now is a matter for the town leadership has to decide what it wants to see happen with the ferry. I know there's a lot of, I think they're They don't have a firm policy. But at the end of the day, I think as a legislator, ferries are good. It's good for the environment. It's good for the commuting public. And I think if done right, I think you have to set the table as to, public transportation isn't meant to break even and isn't meant to make money.
Right.
Public transportation is a service that's provided to the end user.
Right.
And so we don't look at when our roads are being paved, we don't say, are we making money or losing money on this proposition? We say it's a service we expect of our municipal government or of our state government to fix the roads. We don't look at the post office, frankly, and say, oh, it's supposed to break even or make money. We're paying $2 a stamp,
Right.
if that were the case.
Right.
Well, the T is the same way. And I think the MBT, the town of Winthrop, in my respectful opinion, should get out of the ferry business and get the T to run the ferry, exactly as you've suggested, because they're the ones with the expertise in how to run it. They're the ones that are charged with providing a public transportation system. And the ferries are no different than the trolleys. They're no different than the subways, the commuter rail, or the buses. And so I'm going to work with General Manager Poftak is an old friend of mine. We work together in the legislature. Work with Senator Edwards, Rep. Maduro, Chairman Maduro, to try to get the system. But I don't want to overstep my bounds to the town. I think the town has to say, yes, we're on board with this. We're okay with giving up the ferry and having the T run it.
Right.
You know.
I think they'd be all in favor of getting it, off of our books.
Well, of course.
And I think it's always been the priority, but it's just been a matter of not being able to do it for whatever reason. I know when I was on the council, we had Boston Harbor Cruises. We had them in. Terry's had various, services within the harbor. Come in, sit down, talk with us. Is there a chance that you might be able to run it? And we always seem to run out of it. It's just not going to happen.
And again, but I think it's a matter of having the town ultimately make a decision about what does it want to do
Right.
with this. We've been fortunate between, again, my predecessor, but even right before he left the state Senate, Senator Boncory and I were able to get Secretary Tesla to make a few $100,000, I think $300 and something thousand available for a couple of years
Right.
to help Winthrop with the ferry. But at the end of the day, that just sort of hides somewhat of the problem.
Right.
I think we really need to get the town, if the town agrees that it should go to the T, then we have to work legislatively to get the T to take over the responsibility.
Right. Well, we're covered a lot of ground.
Yes. No,
Is there anything that you'd like to bring up that I haven't brought up to you?
No, I just want to, it's ironically enough, we're filming this on the 1-year anniversary of the Democratic primary.
Yep.
I'm honored beyond belief that I'm in the position to serve as the state representative from this area. I'll tell you the first time I walked into the chamber and saw my name on the roll call walls, it sort of took me back and saying, wow, look at this. I was a young kid working for the former rep from Revere, Billy Reinstein, and you weren't allowed to sort of cross into the chamber, and all of a sudden here I am walking in. So it's pretty amazing, and I'm in awe of the responsibility that the people of Winthrop and Revere have bestowed on me. I'll work every day to make sure that I serve our communities effectively and efficiently, and again, I couldn't be happier. Jake Lettieri agreed to be my legislative aide. He's a hard-working George Washington University graduate,
Yep.
hard-working kid, really loves the job, learning a lot. And so we're here for you. I always give out, to the chagrin of my wife sometimes, my home number is 617-539-9979, and my cell is 508-450-8843. Or you can find us on masshouse.gov. All right?
Well, you've been a perfect fit. There's
Thank
no
you.
doubt about that with your connections in Revere and Winthrop, and I wish you the best.
I appreciate it. Look forward to doing this again.
We'll have you back again soon.
Thank you very
All right.
much. Appreciate it, Ron.
Well, we've been sitting with our good friend, Jeff Turco. I remember running against him at one point in time for town council president. It was funny because it's ironic how things turn out. When I ran against Bob Noonan when I first ran for selectman, and we were, head to head. We turned out to be good friends. And the same thing here.
Yes.
We ran against each other for town council president, and we've turned out to be good friends. And that's really the spirit that politics should have, not what's currently in some of the places that you see in Washington and even in the state. So it's really good to have you representing the town of Winthrop and Revere.
Thank you very much. And I totally agree with your sentiment. I think that we have a duty as citizens and government officials to let people know, it's about serving the community, and we have to sort of de-escalate some of the tension that's out in the political air right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
No problem.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much.